Hello, San Jack. Today we're going to be talking about supporting language at San Jacinto Intermediate. Specifically, we're going to be targeting our English language learners. For most of you, if you do not know, our demographics here at our campus, we have a high population of Spanish speakers, and a lot of them, their first language is not English, and so our goal is to get them to that level of English language and be able to provide enough support to have them exit what we call LEP status, limited English proficiency status, and make sure that they are just as successful in making that progression as any other student. So we're going to start off by talking about some acronyms that you will probably hear, not only here at San Jack, but here in Texas, when you go to district training, and so forth. The most important acronym that you will probably hear are the first three right here. It is the LEP, PSYOP, and ELL. These three are the ones that you're going to hear most frequently. LEP stands for Limited English Proficiency. ELL stands for English Language Learner. And those two just go hand in hand. I know that the state has kind of moved towards calling those students L, because this one seems to be a little more with a negative connotation. But they are interchangeable, and you will hear them often. Now, when you're in your actual roster, you'll see PSYOP on there, Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. Sometimes we call them our PSYOP students. Our PSYOP students are the same demographic that we're talking about. And PSYOP was created to support instruction in the classroom for those specific learners. Therefore, we call them our PSYOP students at times as well. Our LTELs, long-term English language learners. Those are our students who have been in the country for more than 6, 7, 8 years. At this point, they've already been in the U.S. school system for that long, and our goal really with them is to get them exited. A lot of you will notice that you have 5 or 6 PSYOP students in your class, but they are level 5, meaning that they have been in the country for about 7 or 8 years and are not requiring that much support, but still, at the same time, it is your responsibility to provide those accommodations. For our level 1s, 2s, and 3s, our counselors have done such a great job of making sure that they have some type of support in your classroom. That doesn't mean that the responsibility is entirely of the aide. Ultimately, you are held accountable, and so we're going to talk a little bit about how to accommodate and differentiate for those students. The best way or the best analogy that I can give for ELPs, our ELP standards are our English Language Proficiency Standards. Those are our TEKS, but for our PSYOP or ELL or LEP students. So our ELP standards is a curriculum that we have to follow in order to make that progression for our students to reach proficiency in English. Our LPAC committee, Language Proficiency Assessment Committee, is comprised of me, your LPAC administrator, Ms. Roldan, our ESL teacher, Ms. Martinez, our bilingual master clerkless, and we also have a parent of a student on our campus. And that parent has to have a student that is currently an LEP student. And what we do, we meet about every 6 weeks to look at the progress of the students. We look at grades. We look at how they're progressing, and in terms of if they're taking an IPT test to see where they're at language-wise. We look at accommodations that need to be in place. And we also look at, can this kid exit? And that's one of the things that we really strive for. One of our biggest accomplishments last year, aside from our STAR scores, was also our TELPAS scores. We made great gains, and we were able to exit many students out of the program. And that's our ultimate goal. When we go down here to TELPAS, our Texas English Language Proficiency Assessment System, TELPAS is like, the analogy I will give you there, TELPAS is basically the test that our English language learners will take in order to get measured on their progress for English. The misconception that's out there is that TELPAS is not really a test that's that important. We do look at it for one of the indexes on student progress, and the state actually looks at it and determines and sets our accountability based on this demographic. So this is something that is taken very seriously. It's a test that you as the teacher of record will be able to rate them in their language. So we'll get more into that specifically, a little bit more in the fall, later in the fall. But for now, I do want to make you aware of the acronym because it is a very important test that we will be having, we'll be practicing with. And last but not least, we have the PLD. That's the Proficiency Language Descriptors, which I will be attaching those to this email as well as the English Language Proficiency Standards, so that way you have access to those. And on the Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 74, I will give you some time to read over this. But in a nutshell, it's the law for you to provide and differentiate classroom instruction for any students in order for them to acquire second language acquisition. And it's making sure that you are providing support at the level they're at. So when we're talking about English language proficiency, we're talking about listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So with these students, you need to make sure that you're incorporating many opportunities for them to actually speak, for them to actually write, so that way you're getting an accurate picture of where exactly they are at. When we are rating them, we'll look at the beginning levels, intermediate, advanced, and advanced high. When a student reaches advanced high, they're able to exit upon other criteria as well. So that takes me to our next slide. In this email, you will receive a left list. I will try and send one of these out every 6 weeks, where you will get a list exactly of where each student is at, what level they are. So because throughout the year we get, we have high mobility, so we get students who come in from Mexico mid-year, and so these lists will change and they will get bigger, and that's just something that we cannot really change. So with the left list, you'll see, let's take, for example, Renato Reyes Lopez. So he has been in the country for 1 year now. Okay, that's what that tells you. And he's not SPED, he is LEP. He's considered an ESL level 2, the reason being because last year was his first year, so this is now his second year. Last year was his first year, so he's considered a 0 last year, and then this year he's a 1. And so his ESL level, as far as how many years he's been getting support, is 2. So if we go down to his TELPAS, he scored beginning for listening, beginning for speaking, beginning for writing, and beginning for reading. That tells you a lot. So if you have Renato Reyes in your classroom, you should be providing a lot of opportunities for him to speak and for him to listen to English instruction. When we're talking about the progression of the English language, a student must acquire listening and speaking first in order to move on to that next level. It doesn't mean that we'll have a kid that is low in speaking but really high in writing, but those are very rare. Typically, the writing is the last thing that is developed in the English really look at making sure they get a good foundation with listening and speaking. On October 13th, in our faculty meeting, I will be going over 7 steps. If you have not gotten your books yet, please be sure you get with Ms. Jimenez, so you can pick up that book, The Talk Great, Talk Right, and the 7 Steps book, because we're really going to be digging deep on those strategies and how that just entails and goes hand in hand with TELPAS. I've also included on the left list their STAR scores, because I think that can just be very beneficial for you to see where they're at. The misconception that we constantly have about English language learners is that they are not very smart, and it's a very common misconception, actually. But there's a lot of STAR students, there's a lot of left students who actually master the STAR. And I think that's through the strategies that you guys get to teach them and how effective those strategies really are. So what does this left list have to do with it? Well, you will be developing a TELPAS Heat Map. This is a TELPAS Heat Map. I will be sending you a blank one. But what you will be doing is you will be taking all the kids from your classes and you will be putting them on this spreadsheet. This report will be due to us September 22nd. And that's going to be part of the faculty meeting. You need to bring a copy of that to me, a hard copy, not an electronic copy, but a hard copy of it on September 22nd. So what you'll do is you will put your name, what class period you have Daniel Flores, and his listening, speaking, writing, and reading. So I'm going to go ahead and do a sample here so you guys can see that. So my teacher last name is Rios. I'm going to pick Sergio Cervantes. Sergio Cervantes. He's in my 4th period. Cervantes. Sergio. And I am going to go one by one to see for listening he was advanced. Okay. And then for speaking he was intermediate and writing he was intermediate. And last but not least, for reading, he was advanced. So, I have to say this is pretty amazing because you go look right here, Sergio Cervantes is a level 2. He has, he's been in the country for 1 year, and he's already at advanced for listening and reading, and he is intermediate for speaking and writing. That is pretty impressive, actually. So as a teacher, I'm going to make sure, because he's able to get to that level, I'm going to make sure I push him a little bit more and help him and support him in that writing component, because that's going to be very critical. Sergio Cervantes is probably a student who received English instruction in his native country. He probably was, obligated to take that. So I believe that that's also why he has scored pretty high. And then it just depends. Every student comes in with a different story. There's some kids that have access to that type of education in their country, and there's other students who lived in a very rural area where, those resources were not accessible. So if I'm looking at supporting Sergio, let's say in my history class, I am going to ensure that he gets more speaking opportunities, because obviously if his listening and his reading are very, they're getting to that high level, then I need to push him a little bit more in speaking, and I need to provide more opportunities for him to regurgitate information and also speak to his peers using academic vocabulary. So basically, with that being said, you are going to fill out this form for all of your students. And at the bottom, we have some reflective questions.